Hey everyone, Crisis here. I think I speak for many power scalers when I say that the benchmark for scaling has always been Dragon Ball. And seeing as Star Wars is honestly maybe one of the most hotly debated fictional series when it comes to their strength levels, I figured we'd go arc by arc, detailing the power of the core team of Z fighters, Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, people like that, and see, based on the power of the Star Wars expanded universe or legends, how far someone like Darth Vader could get into Dragon Ball's power hierarchy. Let's say that Vader appeared on Dragon Ball's Earth. What arc would he most pose a threat, taking into account his speed, overall power and durability, weird force abilities, and martial arts prowess? While being a lifetime fan of Dragon Ball, I figured I'd feature someone more so versed in the series' nitty-gritty.
Hey guys, I'm on Crisis' channel again. The usual range for Dragon Ball characters around the Saiyan 2 Frieza saga is roughly around that Planet 2 star level. We have characters as early as Master Roshi and Piccolo destroying the moon very casually, and Piccolo would go on to grow many times stronger, along with characters like Goku and Vegeta cliffing this version of Piccolo multiple times over. We then see during Namek, characters like Krillin and Gohan surpass the power level of 10,000, which is stated to be the baseline to destroy a planet. We then get Frieza in his first form casually destroying planet Vegeta, which was calculated at dwarf star level, which Vegeta, Piccolo, and Gohan would all manage to surpass and force Frieza to go into his stronger transformations. Frieza would reveal more and more of his true power, growing exponentially and more than likely reaching star level. This is due to the Dragon Ball power levels being exponential, with Dodoria being weaker than Vegeta and wasn't capable of doing anything to him, even though he had a power level of 22,000 compared to Vegeta's 24,000. So you can literally be like barely a percentage stronger than someone in Dragon Ball and completely negate them. Goku, as we know, would attain Super Saiyan and surpass Frieza, meaning he too would reach star level as well. This should be consistent at least with the anime, as Frieza destroying Namek and Kai not only destroyed the planet but also multiple clusters of stars, and we saw the explosion outside of the galaxy, which was calculated to be at around solar system level, so take that for what you will. But at the very least, Frieza and Goku should be star level, with the mid tiers being dwarf star or planet level.
Getting Star Wars to that same planet to star level range is pretty simple. Even as far back as the Old Republic comics, we see the ancient Sith Naga Sadow was able to raise his hands and cause 2 stars to go supernova. While he did this through the use of his powerful crystals aboard his Corsair battleship, his star-busting status spread as legend regardless, with many in and out of universe statements placing many of the more renowned Sith Lords at or above this level, with the likes of Maul, Vader, and of course Sidious being called some of, if not the most powerful Sith Lords in galactic history. Causing double-decker supernovas was pretty much Sadow's claim to fame and would be known as his practical power level, with those prior mentioned Sith still being viewed as more powerful than him regardless. In the Ewok cartoon, using a random dark side artifact, the freakish creatures were able to shift multiple moon-sized objects. Based on the weight of such, and given the speed at which they were yanked around, the amount of destructive energy on display here would be around 9 Yoda tons at a low end or large planet level. Darth Nihilus of KOTOR 2 fame has the strongest case for being a planet buster in the minds of many people, as his ability to drain worlds is very apparent. Not only is it stated that he could life wipe the surfaces of these worlds, we're told that he drains the very energy of the planets themselves. The Force exists everywhere, as we're told many times, so it stands to reason that Nihilus's Force drain ability would give him the Force power of the planets with which he is consuming on every level. And more on the nose, Darth Vader says the Death Star ain't shit, with many statements placing the power of the Force at levels above any super weapon, with its utter destruction of Alderaan due to its pretty much instantly turning things into sparks as soon as its super laser touches the surface, would yield dwarf star levels of energy, far above just overpowering the planet's gravitational binding energy. Even if you think Vader's statement here is hyperbolic, even in the face of his apparent scaling to other quantifiably better feats, omniscient novel statements unbeholden to any bias back Vader up here, such as Anakin wielding planet-destroying power or Darth Bane boasting enough force to crack a planet in 2. Vader is known as the second most powerful being in the galaxy during the events of the Ewok cartoon, and would scale above this random artifact, and boasts many statements of scaling above the likes of the ancient Sith, such as Sadow or Nihilus, at least in terms of attack potency, with Darth Bane being stated the strongest Sith ever at the time of his peak, with the Rule of Two seeing Darth Bane's power leapfrog from Sith to Sith as they killed their own masters. The dark side itself then imbuing the successor with the strength of their teacher, as shown in the Darth Plagueis novel and throughout many statements. The entire narrative around Bane and his grand plan consists of him being the most powerful Sith, with each generation of Dark Lord surpassing the last until we get to Vader and Palpatine, who really aren't that far in power at all, even given some downplay in my opinion. And on top of that, using the lowest possible interpretations, Force storms are stated to be capable of killing entire worlds, so there you go.
Now, when we enter the Cell Saga, the power creeping honestly starts to get a lot worse, like even worse than the Frieza sagas. Piccolo, right before prepping for the androids, would say if none of them believe they can deal with the android threat, who we know should be stronger than Mecha Frieza, then they shouldn't even bother showing up. Now again, this statement could be taken as super vague, but Piccolo, after just being told that these threats are way stronger than Frieza, I think it makes sense as a baseline for them to be above Frieza if they want to be like some type of competent against the androids. And so I believe we can safely infer, at the very least, everyone going into the Android Saga, including characters like Yamcha and Tien and Krillin, should be well into star level by this point. And obviously if we use Kai, then they would be much stronger, but Goku, Vegeta, Trunks, Piccolo, and Gohan all get exponential power-ups throughout the arc, especially Gohan, who would be the only person who can clash with Cell, Cell being the same guy who said he'd wipe out the solar system with his Kamehameha, which both the anime and manga confirm. And if we use Kai, similar to the Frieza saga, you can actually get Cell a lot higher, as he has a plethora of statements saying he has infinite power. Which might seem vague, but I mean, this in conjunction with statements of him destroying the universe, you could probably say he has infinite 3D attack potency at his best.
As for solar system scaling to match Super Perfect Cell or Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, there are actually a few avenues to play Star Wars characters at that level. For one, Jarek, a Darkside Inquisitor first assigned under Palpatine, was able to tap into the powerful Force Nexus known as the Valley of the Jedi. If he were to become truly one with such energy, it was stated that the Dark Jedi could set off supernovas to eradicate the entire solar system. This level of power was stated by Darth Vader in the Dark Empire endnotes to be fully within reach. Wutzek, a weird, Force demon or something created in the 70s Marvel Star Wars comics, was stated in the comics narration box to be capable of devastating entire worlds or solar systems. This thing just gets released at the end of the issue and flies off, with Vader and Sidious being stated as the two most powerful beings in the galaxy around the exact same time. So again, given the statements about Vader's power at the time, he would be able to output greater forces than this solar system devastating entity.
Going into the Buu Saga, there's only a handful of characters who get that much stronger, which is pretty much just the Saiyans. Goku and Vegeta, when entering Super Saiyan 2, both surpassed the Gohan who defeated Cell, meaning they should at the very least be multi-solar system. Gohan himself would get stronger than ever, gaining an ultimate form. And if you want to hyper downplay the Buu Saga or Dragon Ball characters, then they should be reaching multi-solar pretty easily, but I am personally under the belief characters like Gohan, Super Saiyan 3 Goku by the end of the Buu Saga, and Buu are all to be multi-galaxy if not universal. Given the fact that they can do a significant amount of damage to the living universe within a finite amount of time, they should at the very least be reaching those galaxy tiers, but this is only looking at it from a surface level. You see, there are a bunch of statements of the Dragon Ball universe being infinite in size, meaning despite Kid Buu destroying the universe within 1,000 years, he should very well reach those universal tiers of attack potency. This is consistent as well, since Buhan, while baby raging, can cause the living universe to collapse, and in the anime, Kid Buu was said to not only destroy the living realm, but also the Grand Kai's world, which is another universe on its own. And if you want to bring up how Kid Buu is just destroying the planets one by one, so therefore he isn't universal, well, to that I say that Kid Buu is literally destruction incarnate and is demented. Like, I'm not even joking when I say that. He genuinely loves bringing pain to others and just seeing life get destroyed, so he's probably just taking his time and having a blast. And so at worst, by the end of Z, most characters should be solar system or multisolar, with the top tiers being either galaxy or universal depending on your interpretation of the Dragon Ball macrocosm.
To reach these same universal levels of power, the Revenge of the Sith novelization makes it very clear that Count Dooku could and does channel all the power that the dark side can draw from throughout the universe. With this energy field, like I said, existing in all things, it stands to reason that Dooku would be wielding power capable of matching universe gangbusters. Many people look at this statement and claim it as hyperbole on the grounds that Sidious is clearly right there, doubting that Dooku could somehow just yank away and use his power whenever he wants. However, these statements specify that he's outputting energy from throughout the universe, with Sidious likely being able to channel higher dimensional energy even at this stage. For one, merchandise referencing events as to imply it's Revenge of the Sith era Sidious, such as his fight with Mace, state he's capable of creating the aforementioned Force storms even back then, with those dates given in Sidious's own writing informing his practicing of such techniques right around the events of Order 66. Force storms are essentially wormholes in hyperspace, a realm stated to surpass the third spatial and fourth temporal dimensions. Essentially, at least a single infinitude greater than that of the power within just the universe alone. The Force itself has been described as higher dimensional many times, so Dooku wielding infinite 3D power or just baseline universal would not be a contradiction, as there is evidence to scale Sidious even during Revenge of the Sith to a fourth dimensional tier of strength. A few other beings, such as Yoda, Sidious, or even Darth Plagueis, have been known to wield the full power of their respective sides of the Force, which at face value would place them at least within the same multi-galactic level that many people scale to in the Boo Saga. If we just want to say that either halves of the full power of the Force, the light and dark side, would therefore be half of universal levels of power, it would get in that multi-galactic range. Of course, there is the argument that the Star Wars universe is infinite in size, as it's supposedly a galaxy neighboring our own. In the same way, I guess that the Dragon Ball Heroes world somehow connects to our world, or how Superboy Prime can visit the DC headquarters. Even if obviously it's not really in our actual universe, it's clearly based on it, and the fiction sort of is predicated on it being another galaxy. So in that sense, many people believe by now that our universe is infinite in scope, with half of infinity still being, of course, infinite. Even ignoring everything said about hyperspace, we're told in the Star Wars Comics Companion that Dark Empire Sidious would have destroyed all of space with a Force storm, therefore scaling him to universal at a minimum. Unless you assert that time and space are inherently connected, rather than being separate dimensions layered on top of one another. Anakin obviously killed Dooku, with Vader quickly surpassing that level of power a few months later in the Rise of Darth Vader novel, eventually reaching peak after peak in A New Hope, ESB, and finally Return of the Jedi, sans his confliction. It's worth stating that Dooku did not hold back on Skywalker, as many, for some reason, like to believe, both in his own words and that of Dave Filoni, a producer of the Clone Wars series, which is mostly canon to Legends. By this same logic as well, Vader would be greater than that of the prequel trilogy top tiers, since he himself was one, when not yet at his own peak of power. So everything I said about Revenge of the Sith Sidious, or Yoda, would for the most part apply to Vader at his height of strength.
Dragon Ball Super is where we start to really reach those higher dimensional tiers. In the first arc of Super, Goku becomes a Super Saiyan God and has a fist clash with Beerus, and only with a few punches they were capable of destroying pretty much everything in the living universe, including the afterlife, which has a fourth dimensional construct. This same Goku absorbs this power into his base and trains along with growing crazy strong throughout all of Super, with Vegeta pretty much being right next to him the whole time, so he too would attain these levels of strength along with any character who can pretty much press base Goku and above. Even Krillin. Yes, Krillin can blow up a universe. Stay mad and stay with the times, caveman. Anyway, we see Zamasu as well become one with a timeline, which Goku believes can be taken care of if they have a sensu bean. Yeah, this is a little questionable, I'm not gonna lie, but if you think the creeping was bad before, well, prepare for the Tournament of Power creep. Goku would go on to use Blue Kaioken times 20 and the Spirit Bomb on Jiren in episodes 109 and 110, which both don't work, and as we all know, he discovers Ultra Instinct, which allows him to give Jiren an actual fight. The amount Goku would grow from these fights is actually ridiculous, going from needing UI to press Jiren to taking punches that are from a stronger Jiren in base. And so by this point, I believe the top tier Super Saiyan Blue characters should be well into 5D, given the fact that Goku with just the God Amp managed to collapse everything rather than Kid Buu, who was destroying the living universe over time. And if that's not enough to convince you, then I mean Jiren transcending pretty much anything previously, including Merge Zamasu, probably should solidify this chain. So a timeline is unironically below episode 109 Jiren, and there's always the surpassing time scan, but I find it silly and a little out of context. But unironically, it's not even wrong. Anyone who pretty much can press Jiren should be in that 5th dimensional range, while any low tier in the TOP that's not TN is probably low multiversal.
In truth, as I've kind of alluded to, Force storms are far more powerful than planetary or even universal levels of strength. Like I said, the Force is higher dimensional in nature, with hyperspace sitting above the entirety of space and time. The Force storms being wormholes torn into hyperspace, with Sidious being able to amplify their potency with his very rage. This is insane. The fact that Palpatine's anger can add to the already incomprehensible energies, infinitely dwarfing the entire universe at least one time over. Darksiders, of course, do pretty much everything with their anger. It fuels their abilities, force augmentation, and dueling, giving us a pretty firm connection between these higher dimensional energies and certain Sith and Jedi's attack potency. To break it down a little more, if Sidious can control and amp these 4th or even 5th dimensional energies, he would be capable of amplifying the likes of his durability and striking power to these same levels, using basic techniques such as Force Valor. Vader, per both feats and statements, should not be left out of the discussion regarding this level of power. Not only was Dark Empire Luke someone who could scrap with Dark Empire Sidious multiple times compared to Vader's strength, but it's implied that Sidious, in a weaker state than his Return of the Jedi self, outright mastered Force storms altogether, or could at the very least control 4th dimensional energy. Vader was conflicted and therefore weakened against Luke, beaten to the ground, called more nerfed than ever before, and still walked through and survived for a time what's implied to be Palpatine's full power Force lightning, which Vader is outright vulnerable to. Based on this, if he wasn't already near death and fully motivated, Anakin would have likely survived this attack outright. Force lightning from a Sidious stronger than the one who mastered 4th to 5th dimensional energy.
When it comes to speed, I mean, we have as early as Dragon Ball Kid Goku dodging light, whether it was from a laser or the solar flare. Kid Goku should very much be around light speed, even entering Dragon Ball Z, and we have calcs like Goku evading things in space when he's on his way to Namek, Vegeta's final flash in the Cell Saga, and Goku racing in Grand Kai's planet, all coming out around the massively faster than light range. By the end of the Buu Saga, anyone capable of harming Kid Buu or Buuhan should have infinite speed, as they can destroy an infinite-sized universe within a finite amount of time. Meaning anybody who surpasses Z, which is like any super character that isn't Tien or Roshi, should be unironically infinite speed, and those two characters I mentioned should be well into massively faster than light. But if you want to take things a step further, there is the immeasurable speed scaling, which I did briefly mention with Jiren surpassing time, but again, this is a little out of context. And you also have the whole future Zeno erasing everything, including the flow of time, and so Goku walking around this would mean he has inaccessible speed, but
as for speed, combat skill, and random abilities, Star Wars is pretty clearly faster than light, with blaster bolts being called lasers dozens and dozens and dozens of times over. While Jedi do possess precognition, most of their feats, such as Windu deflecting these light beams at around over half of the speed of light, are performed after the beam was already underway. Even if I knew a bullet was coming at me, for example, if I managed to dodge it after it was fired at all, I'd still be at least somewhat outpacing it. Genuinely. This is also ignoring the fact that Vader could react to dozens of lasers point blank. Even Magna Guards are stated to fight at near light speeds. Beyond this, Anakin himself performed a massively faster than light feat of halting a ship moving in hyperspace, stopping it before it crashed into a planet. We also have instances of various Sith spirits like Vitiate or Sidious flying around the galaxy at these same speeds. To get the verse any higher would require some somewhat nebulous means, like asserting that the realm of Mortis is outside of the flow of normal time, meaning that anyone who fought in the dimension possesses immeasurable speed, as moving without time breaks the speed formula itself. Famous Sith spirits have as well managed to project their specters across time, and flow walking is a type of time travel achievable through the Force. All of these could be used to perhaps scale a few characters to immeasurable speeds. However, in the case of Mortis, I'd probably argue that every Jedi who was there would have been amped to such a degree that they'd never again reach, making it hard to scale their unamped selves to this level of swiftness. Mortis is pretty much like a passive amp to the greatest degree to Force users. Although Exar Kun, a very ancient Sith, was able to obliterate one of those time-transcending evil ghouls with the power of his standard equipment amulets, with Vader again likely scaling at least 2 or above that when not conflicted or holding back.
As for abilities among the Dragon Ball verse, I mean, you have have a wide array of energy blasts like the Kienzon, which can cut people far stronger than you, the Kamehameha, Special Beam Cannon, Masenko, Gallic Gun, Tri-Beam. Just a lot of cool and unique ways to basically vaporize you. And we have a lot more complex abilities within the verse like Frieza's Telekinesis, Goku's God Bond that can restrain opponents, Krillin and Tien's Solar Flare, teleportation, cloning, and on top of their wide array of abilities, we have pretty much every character being somewhat knowledgeable in hand-to-hand, with characters as early as Jackie Chun being stated to know every martial arts move, and Goku only lost to him due to a height advantage. The skill gap, like strength in Dragon Ball, grows exponentially, so you can only imagine what the likes of Goku could do now. By this point, he can feel attacks through air currents, fight with instinct movements, and somehow stack it with his transformations, is always able to adapt to his opponent as the fight goes on, and always takes a part of your style and uses it against you.
In terms of combat skill, the Dark Lord is a master of every saber style. In fact, he'd be the highest level of combatant as he can switch between techniques on a whim mid-combat. He was also able to embarrass the greatest royal guard, with the baseline for these Imperials being total mastery of every weapon and fighting style in the entire galaxy. And again, Vader just clowned on the best of these dudes. As far as powers, Vader has too many to name here, but his relevant ones are 2 to Menace, or energy negation, which can work on fire or force lightning, resistances to force stun or telekinetically holding one in place. He can vaporize you through the force, has precognition, can project infinity into one's mind, empower himself off of emotions such as rage, fire his own form of force lightning, create shields to block laser fire, and on and on. So with everything documented, I think we've shown that Vader, based on certain scaling chains, can actually match much of Dragon Ball in terms of attack potency, martial skill, and their hacks abilities. Many people uphold Dragon Ball's destructive range, i.e. planet busting, galaxy wiping, or universe killing. But, as shown, ancient Sith could blow up planets and stars, other entities are literal threats to entire star systems, and Sidious, even in a weakened state, scales to universal to higher dimensional energies. So even if Vader likely can't blow up any of these things in one shot, based on the lore of the EU and statements, the raw power behind his strikes and his durability would be able to endure forces of those levels. People like Naga Sadao and Nihilus can drain or blow up entire planets, and Vader is just stated to be more powerful than them. Albeit his techniques seem to lack the range to destroy an entire planet, again, his strikes would just be that powerful though, based on statements. He can't smack his lightsaber on the ground so hard that the planet explodes, or the universe, or anything like that, but based on pure potency, he would be able to hurt people that could withstand, let's say, the universe blowing up on top of them, or even higher than that considering he scales to the potency of Force Storms.
Both Vader and Goku, for example, scale exponentially above masters of every fighting style of their universe, can scale above precog fighters or fighters who somewhat exist in the future. However, very few fighters in Dragon Ball boast a level of sword or saber mastery as Darth Vader, and Goku pretty much passed up the power pole when he was a kid. Meanwhile, Vader was a top tier master of a lightsaber before even honing himself through nearly 2 decades of constant training and experience.
In regards to hacks, Star Wars actually sports many counters to the standard Dragon Ball abilities. Ki and the Force are very similar in concept and application, so it wouldn't be too disingenuous to say Vader's hacks and resistances would likely work against the Saiyans. Given Vader's relative strength, 2 to Menace would act well as energy nullification of such attacks as the Kamehameha. Resistance to Force Stun would counter the God Bind. If the Z fighters were to give into their rage for power, as they often do, Vader too would be amped as he'd feed off their anger. Essentially, if base Goku were fighting and went Super Saiyan to get over 50 times stronger, Vader too would just go Super Saiyan essentially, since he's able to amplify himself off of the rage in other people. Mastered Ultra Instinct possessing autonomous movements, or like auto-dodging, is a trait shared by even kinda low-tier Jedi. Moving and fighting without reacting is kind of a standard among the peak fighters in fiction.
The greatest chance DB has of outright negging Vader is through the Hakai, which Goku and Vegeta can sport to various degrees. There are some implications that weaker forms of Valkorion, which Sidious and Vader would all in likelihood scale to insofar as of raw power, could erase the Force or even color from entire worlds. Plus, Sidious was going to consume the entire universe with 5D energy.
So, if we consider the Star Wars expanded universe, Vader gets up to Dragon Ball Super levels of capabilities. If somehow revealed as the next threat after Black Frieza, yeah, very likely, Gogeta or even Beerus would have to show up for real. Of course, characters like Beerus or Whis at full power, especially Zeno, would likely be too much for Darth Vader, as the Sith Lord is at like near levels of power compared to Goku, using that higher dimensional scaling, or beings like the Angels can just effortlessly fodder people like that, even dozens and dozens of times stronger than characters at Vader's level like Gogeta, so he'd probably stop there. With all that said, thanks for watching, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you all next time.